Patrick. I've come to talk tonight about future-proofing our students. You know, future-proofing, taking care of what they're going to be like and letting them be able to cope with the world that they're going to find once they get through school. Because really, we are not too certain what that world is going to be like. But with anything, starting from the future means we really have to start from the past. And since I'm talking about me, and I'm an old guy, and I've been around a long time, let's start with where I started virtually. This is my classroom in 1974. I'm sorry I can't show you a photo, but I think that was probably before photography was invented. This classroom was around. But it was literally an old prefab, an old hut that was put in a paddock. It was built in the 50s. It was dumped in a paddock at the bottom of a rugby field in a 4-teacher school halfway up a mountain in New Zealand. But the work that the kids did in this classroom was amazing. I have, as you can see, things like an arts corner, a math corner, a technology corner, which meant I had saws and hammers and nails, and an AV corner, which meant I had a reel-to-reel film projector and a reel-to-reel tape recorder. And if we wanted to show anything, the kids had to order their films from the National Film Library, and it took 2 to 3 weeks for them to arrive. So immediacy wasn't one of the things that happened. But it worked. It worked really well. It worked because the kids did their skill work from 8:30 till 10:30 every day. They did math, reading, spelling. They even did speech in that time. And at 10:30 they went to break, came back, and from 11:15 till 3 o'clock every day they did what they liked. And they built what they liked. They studied what they liked. And it was they chose what they had to do. But look at this classroom, because this classroom is not very different to this one. And this is the one that we're supposed to be looking up to today. The difference is here that this classroom's got a laptop area. So there's gone is the immediacy of, or the need to wait 3 weeks for something to happen. It's got a smart board and a projector, so all of these things, everything can happen a lot quicker in this classroom. But essentially, it's really the same. I'm not certain that I like that paint table thing up there. I think it should have much more of a tinkering sort of stuff on the table where the kids can make a few more things, but it's a pretty good representation. The difference between this and this is really the technology. Technology has changed so much in that time. For a start, we never even knew what a computer was, hardly, in 1974. But now, we live with it all the time. Now, that's one thing, but another thing has changed too, and the technology is causing a change that we have to think about. This was a question that was asked of 150 international school heads, and by way of a survey. What did they think was the most important and relevant challenge that they faced in international schools? Well, they came up with a whole variety of answers, and I've got a couple here that I'm going to read to you. One said, because of the change in the way things were being done and the nature of knowledge, that this resulted in a shortage of properly trained and appropriately equipped teachers. Literally, there was a supply shortage of teachers that could effectively deliver on demand what schools need to provide and what students need to learn today and for the future. And another one even went so far to say is when he was hiring teachers, he needed to ensure that they had the mastery of their content, yes, but also they were highly capable of modeling, teaching, and assessing the right skills. For every 10 teachers that this head interviewed in his school, or ones that he'd interviewed for jobs in his school, only 2, in his opinion, could effectively design the right educational environment to facilitate deep skill learning for their students. 2 out of 10. That's an 80% mismatch between supply and demand. Not very good in a market economy. Of course, the other 8 teachers still got employed, it's just they couldn't do what the head really wanted them to do. Knowledge has changed. It's changed from categorization and hierarchies, it's changed to networks and ecologies, and that change has brought a very important sea change onto the way we should see things. Now everything, the changes that are required emphasize the need for the change in spaces and the change in the structure of our organization. They also need to think about deep skills. Why? Because this is happening, and it's happening right here in Tokyo. The Todai project at Tokyo University is currently involved in designing an AI computer, which is just a laptop sitting on a desk, and that computer is going to be capable of passing the entrance exam in every subject at Tokyo University in 6 years. 6 years. Already the computer can pass 3 or 4 subjects. In 6 years it's going to pass the lot. What does that do for the kids who are going through school now? How are they going to cope with that? Are they going to compete with a computer? Are they going to be able to take the robot down when they do their exam that they've trained for years? Probably not. You know, when we're training people now at school for an occupation, so they have the skills to do a job, we've got to get them into university first before they train that job. And if they're going to compete with a robot, what are we going to do? That brings this to a head. Now, the standards that we use to guide our students today meeting necessarily the needs of the world that we live in? Well, I don't know that they are. I think that, you know, learning our reading and doing our math when we've got computers that are going to do all that for us, even translate languages and so forth and so on, maybe they're not quite what we need now. So what is the right sort of educational environment that facilitates deep skill learning? Well, and what might those deep skills be? Well, this is my suggestion. Build a maker curriculum. Professor June Maker designed a curriculum for gifted students in Australia in the 1980s, project-based and for gifted students because the technology wasn't available to give other students access to the problem solving that was required. Every time we mention a maker curriculum now, we think of a pile of tools in the corner and people making things. No. A proper maker curriculum is all about building things and putting it together. Design thinking. We need to think like a designer. Here is a problem. How can we solve it? What are various solutions? What is the best one? What do we do? Libraries. Library 3.0. Library 3.0. The traditional library just cannot cater for the fact that there is so much knowledge available to people on the internet now. How do they cope with the categorization and use of that knowledge? Online and blended learning. We need to, often our classroom is almost becoming a redundant space because of the fact that we can take our learning with us to home. We can do it anywhere. We can see it on a computer. How do we support that? Project-based learning, one of the most misunderstood terms around. But project-based learning is the basis of a maker curriculum. Games-based learning. We don't think about games well enough. Games are so useful for providing safe context for people to try out things that they would never, ever be able to try anywhere else. Games have a very big part to play. Learning analytics. We test too much. We stop teaching so we can test. Why? Why not have a program where everything is actually in place, where as the kids go along, their reading scores are kept, their math things, it's available. Metametrics has got a system that works, a very simple system that works along those lines in the States. And social entrepreneurship. Why should the school be a little shoebox over here and the community over here? How can we connect the learning that our kids do in school with what happens outside? Well, my answer to the deep skill things is called prototyping. Prototyping is the product. Posing the questions, kids can do that, no trouble. But creating a product, now that's a different matter. Prototyping is a product. And once you have it, that leads on to innovation, because innovation means a lot more than what we give it credit for. This is my design program, a booklet I made up for an ebook for parents, and explaining the bits and pieces of a program that we're developing this year. And it's got 4 strands that run through every year. We teach kids to code. We teach them how to program. We use Scratch. We started off as the first year, and honestly, I can't get the kids off the computers. And maybe that sounds fairly familiar to parents. But they now can function at a very adequate level. And they're learning to code because they're going to have to code their robots. We do robotics. We've got the Mindstorm robots down there, and telling them what to do is the aim of the coding exercise. But we don't forget about the building. Modeling. How do you make your prototype? What's a prototype going to look like? Because without something to see, you haven't got a prototype. And innovation. Not only that, but socially responsible, innovative projects. This one is about the 300,000 kids who don't have shoes. And it's called Shoes That Grow. And it's an invention by a Scots inventor who invented a very simple piece of leather that he buttoned together, and it now lasts for 5 years instead of 1 year, and it can grow as the kid's foot grows, which means that 300,000 people who don't have shoes, who are too poor for them, can have shoes in a very simple and effective way. That's innovation. That's actually taking your prototype and using it for a purpose. This is an innovation platform. And every kid should be exposed to every part of that. To innovate, they need to understand that there are things that you need to do. You have to investigate. You have to look at the market. You have to examine your community. You have to do the whole thing with product development, find out what works and what doesn't, and so forth and so on. But the important thing about all this is that for a teacher to be able to handle this, they have to have control of the systems in their classroom. Not the content. The content is something that the kids get. Knowledge is something they find and they adapt to a context. But the teacher needs to be able to provide the opportunities for that sort of thing to happen through the technology, through the way they accept things, through guiding kids through learning to fail as much as learning to succeed. And if they can do that, they have a classroom that's going to future-proof their kids. They're going to be able to cope with the robots when they get to university. They're going to be able to answer the problems because the people who are going to be alive in the age of the robots are the ones who can ask the questions and pose the big problems. If a teacher is only using the same resources and the same teaching techniques and the same skills that they used 5 years ago, they're guilty of educational malpractice. And we need to think about that. We teachers need to think about that every day. I'll never forget walking into my first high school classroom, into the staff room to see the geography teacher who'd been at that school for 25 years using his Bander machine to copy off his Bander sheets that he'd made 25 years ago. How sad is that? Thank you very much.